Both teams were down some pieces, and yes, it mattered that Tyreek Hill wasn't there, but not in the how lopsided it was.
Can I bring this up? Because I've said this, I said this before, and I understand, especially because, I mean, you guys understand how fans work in general. And I want to make sure I start by saying that Jameson Williams deserves every ounce of hype he's gotten this offseason, rightfully so. But the thing where they lose me is when people forget how good Amon-Ra St.Brown is.
Yeah.
And it's like you can have, both can be true, right? Like Jameson can take a step forward, and Amon-Ra St.Brown is still a two-time All-Pro wide receiver, probably a top 5 wide receiver in the National Football League. And I think for me, I'll speak for myself, when I hear, hey, Jeff, Jameson's going to lead the team in receiving yards. Love the optimism. I really do. But then when I go to training camp, you guys have been there every day, and then I see things like today where it's like, I think Al Karsten put out, and he probably had 250 yards out there. I'm sitting there going, yeah, I mean, do we forget how good this is? And don't forget Jared Goff is a type of quarterback where, and this is most quarterbacks actually, he needs to trust you. And Amon-Ra St.Brown, there was no doubt with his hands, their connection they've had over the last couple of years, that is not going anywhere. Like Amon-Ra St.Brown's a chain mover. So as much as I love the JMO optimism, he deserves it. He's going to have a big year. I think today was just symbolic of like, don't forget about 14 because there's not a single DB that can guard that man.
Who's wide receiver 1? You can believe that JMO's going to outgain St. Brown all you want. If you brought that to St. Brown, he would say, bullshit he is. Bullshit he is. St. Brown on the field that I watched today was the best player, and it was not close. And I'll go back to one-on-ones. The first route he runs, he torches Jones down the sideline. He caught that touchdown with probably 5 to 7 yards of separation between he and Jones, just on a simple go ball down the sideline. His second one-on-one rep, he makes an insane over-the-shoulder catch on a perfectly timed throw, to your point, Jeff, by Jared Goff. On his third 1v1 rep, again against Jones. Poor Jones, man. It was just a long day for him. He put him on skates at the line of scrimmage with as clean of a release as I've seen in my 4 years watching Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then just for good measure, got Jones one more time to finish 1v1s. And look, it's pretty easy for receivers to generally dominate 1v1s. You go to team drills, and St. Brown is open on every single route he ran. And he made the catch of training camp, maybe the catch of his career, if we include all exhibition games and all camps and all practices in the red zone on a fade ball from Goff. This one against the rookie corner Marshall, a 5th-round pick, where he really didn't have much separation. They ran the play from the 8-yard line. And as the ball's in the air and Marshall is on his hip, you're wondering, how is St. Brown going to catch this? Well, he caught it by pinning the ball with one hand to the back of Marshall's helmet while also toe tapping the sideline. And St. Brown has made so many catches now that he rarely celebrates a singular one. After that catch, which came after dominating the Dolphins for about an hour and a half straight, he punted the ball into the air. His teammates went nuts, including Penei Sewell, who came over like it was the greatest thing he had ever seen. And I agree, Jeff, today was representative of who is the best weapon for this team on offense.
Probably pretty glad you got that guy under contract last year because the price tag would only be going up. I was just checking it out, $30 million per year for St. Brown. You got guys like DK Metcalf making more. Like I've said this before, and if there's a hole in Amon-Ra's game, it's the deep ball. It wasn't today, but he doesn't have a track record of consistently getting open on those. But every single other little thing a receiver can do, he just does it to a level of mastery. For every ounce of skill and talent he has in his body, he gets everything out of it, and it's every day. And I always think back to what Campbell said last year. Dan Campbell said last year is we sometimes just have to forget not to take this guy for granted because he's just so freaking reliable. And right, JMO deserves all the hype. He does, but what do we see from him today? We see some drop passes, and I still think the one area where I'd like to see Jameson Williams grow he has this knack for letting mistakes beat him twice. That's what you always talk about with football players, particularly cornerbacks, but wide receivers too. Don't let the mistake linger. You have to move to the next play. And it always seems like it snowballs with Jameson. He drops one pass, then he drops another, and then he has maybe a bad practice and stacks on another bad practice. And it works in a positive sense too. He builds on good things over and over and over, but he still has trouble, it seems, letting go of when he has the setbacks, the snafus. And that's why I think, there's no hole mentally in St. Brown's game more than anything.
And there's a lot of talk about, is JMO going to have more receiving yards than Saint? Like, what's the timeshare going to be there? And I get it, because we're all hyping up JMO in camp and everyone loves JMO. But yeah, I mean, Saint, when you watch him in these practices, days like this really confirm that he's the bona fide number one option on this team. And, something else I would say is that when you have a new offensive coordinator in place and, you're still trying to put the offense and install that in these practices, I think early on in the season, there could be some growing pains as they kind of figure things out and adjust to each other. And I think when that happens, you might see Goff just lean on Saint even more just to keep the chains moving if there are some early struggles. So, there's a lot of talk about that. I still see Saint being the number one guy. Even when Justin and I were on the other side of the field watching the defense, you would just look over to your left or, hear the crowd roaring, and then you see Saint just punting the ball or running free in the end zone. The Lions actually tweeted out just a complete highlight reel of Saints catches today, and I'm pretty sure it was about 12 minutes long. So that gives you an idea of how things were today. He had a great day, man. It was really cool to see.
After the one-handed pin to the back of the helmet catch on the very next play, which was then run from the 6-yard line, he ran another super crisp route to the front pylon, and Goff hit him in stride. And it was like he was already bored with himself for his previous touchdown, so he just went up and posted another. And, St. Brown was pretty honest after practice. I think he admitted to what all of us have observed in camp, which is that the defense has been painfully at times ahead of the offense. And he called it the elephant in the room, kind of this unspoken understanding that the offense has had, as he said himself, struggles so far in camp. And he also said, that's normal as you're breaking in a new coordinator and also a lot of new coaches on that offensive staff between